Now YouTubers, today what we're going to look at is brakes, how to look at them to see when they're worn and how to replace pads and discs. Most cars, they're very similar. There's a few little differences in other cars, but basically very similar. It's very simple to do. You don't particularly need any special tools, and yeah, that's it. So let's get our hands dirty and let's get stuck in. First thing I'm going to do is take off the tyre. Now you're not going to really be able to see very well on camera, but basically this is the pad and there's not a lot of meat left on that. That's the metal part of the pad, and this is the actual part that breaks, and I can't even get the spanner in it. And how to know about your discs, again, there's a big lip right there. So that's how you know when your discs are worn. You've got a big lip, and I mean, it's not going to show it very well on camera, but honestly, I mean, it's stopping the screwdriver, the spanner lifting up. So that's how we know it needs to be changed, and we'll get changing. Now this is a new pad, and you can see how thick the actual pad is. I mean, the other one was so thin. So that's what a new pad looks like. And obviously we'll show you the disc. So you can see now we've got the wheel off. Easiest thing to do is you turn the caliper towards you, so you can see what you're doing a lot easier. That's the first thing to do. Now the easiest way I find to do it, again you might get a few comments, but look, it works, I can assure you. Some people take the bleed nipple out and push the piston back, but then you have to bleed the brakes. You don't really need to. Get a nice chunky thick flat bladed screwdriver, wedge it in between and literally just pull. And believe it or not, I slipped out, but that is pulling the piston back. Then if you want to get in between, because we're obviously changing this, and if you want, because we're getting in between, because we're obviously changing this, so we're not worried about the pad, you can literally hammer this in between the pad and the disc. Now you do damage the pad this way, but we're changing it so it doesn't matter. And then literally pull it towards you, and I can feel that piston going in. And that's it. So I just pull it back, feel the piston going in. Now I can take off the actual caliper itself. And on this one, it's two 12 mils. We'll zoom out. Two 12 mils here and here. Crack them off. One. Put a span on to make it a bit easier for myself. These are tight. That's two. Screw them off. Just two little 12 mm bolts. Now the caliper will come off. Move that out of the way. Now you can see the damage. Just zoom out. You can see the damage I've done there, but you can also see the damage, the ridge right on the top, the ridge that the actual brake disc has put into it. Pull it down. Now what we need to do, there's two bolts inside here. You see one there and one there. They're 22 mil. Just zoom into them so you can see. One here, finger is, and the other one there. They're 22 mil. This then will release the with the carrier. But a good thing to check before you release the carrier is make sure that these, now you can see that sliding in and out. That's good. This one is actually seized. That's not good. So we're going to have to address that. That's actually good that that's doing that, because I can show you how to free that out. So it's supposed to be like this, nice and free. This one is seized. So now it's seized. The easiest way we can actually do this now it's on. It's easy to do it when it's on than when it's off. Now there's a few ways of doing this. The first thing you need to do is make sure you remove the rubber seal, because you don't want to damage that. So get that out of the way. And the way I like to do it is to get a vice grips in there. You can use, well, all sorts, but the vice grips I find is a little bit easier. And all I've done is I've levered against the caliper and this, and I've just pushed it out. Now it's free. Basically what happens, this all goes rusty all inside there, and it just basically cakes up. All we're going to do is get a wire brush on it, clean it. Now I have a wire brush on one of my grinding wheels, standalone grinding wheels. Now what I've done is I've just put this on my wire brush wheel, and hopefully, I don't know if you can see that, you can see I've just cleaned off all the rust. Now you'll see a big difference now, even with no grease on. See how easy that goes in and out. What I want to do now is I want to grease it. Normal grease is fine. I'm just going to use a bit of grease I had left over from the CV boot joint video that I did not so long ago. So I'm going to use a bit of that grease. Now you can see I've used some of that grease. The best stuff about that grease is it is actually designed for a bit of heat as well. You want grease that will take a bit of heat, because this is near your brakes and these can get very hot. So it's just a simple case of sliding it back in, pushing the little rubber seal over the edge, and that's, as you can see now, look at the difference. Now what that'll do is, now when you press the brakes, then brakes are going to wear nice and evenly. Wipe a bit of the excess grease out, and that's it. So it's a good thing actually that happened. That's a great little tip, that. So now we're going to do the 222 mils. I'm just going to use the air gun because it's easier. Now, as you can see, that's off. That's now the carrier off. Move that out of the way for a second. Now this disc will just slide straight off. And what happens with most discs is all the damage happens on the inside, so you can't really see it. So when you look at a disc from the outside, it all looks great. But hopefully, if that shows up, there is a huge lip there. Now, just need to put everything back on. Now you get your new disc, and I've got that on the wrong way around at the minute, and the reason is, when you get a new disc, you get all this grease on it, and it stops it from going rusty. So you get your brake cleaner, squirt around it and wipe it off. It takes all the grease and all the crap and everything off it. And then literally take it off, spin it around so it's on the proper way. Do the same again. And then it instantly dries this stuff, so it doesn't leave any residue. It's great. Now that's the disc on, basically. As you can see, simple. Now for the carrier. Now it's a good idea, there's these anti-rattle clips, the metal clips inside. So when you get new brake pads on some cars, you get them with them, some cars you don't. So just give them a rub with the wire brush and then put a bit of copper grease on them. I'm obviously not going to show you that, I'm going to do that, but there's no point me showing you that. Now as you can see, I've got copper grease on them now. So this is ready to go back in. Easy just to spin it to you again. Get your bolts ready, put on the carrier, and literally put this on like that. Put the bolts in. Again, before you tighten anything, Make sure you get both bolts in. Screw in by hand. Now we can tighten them. Again, I'm going to use the air gun on a certain setting, and then I'm going to squeeze them by hand. Now they're in. I always like to tighten all these by hand, just to give them that final check. So I've just got a big bar and I'm just doing it by hand. Nice squeeze. Now, when you get brake pads, some brake pads come with this metal clip. Some do, some don't. The metal clip goes on the inside. Now I've seen people put these on wrong, and I don't think it makes that much difference, to be honest. But they come on the inside, so I always like to put them back on the inside. And again, before you put them on, lube them up with a bit of copper grease. The way I like to do it is do the edges like that. Do the other one. Put it in, and then put the copper grease here. You put it all over. I'm just going to put it all over just to show you. But I like to do that inside. The reason why I do that when it's in, it just stops you getting it all over on your hands, because it can be quite messy. And literally, that just slots in. Just slots in just like that. As you can see, it's just slotted in. I'll show you with this one because I'm on my own today, so it's very difficult. You can see the edge here, and the edge lines up with that in there. So basically, it's very difficult to hold the camera and do this at the same time, but basically you slide it in, and as you can see, it just goes in over the top like that. I've got to take this back out now and put a bit of copper grease on it, but that's how you do it. I hope you can see this a bit easier. Again, just going to put some copper grease on the top. Obviously, make sure you don't put it there. That kind of goes without saying, but and it slots in. Two ends in. Push it home. And now, this is when I like to just lube it all up. Just saves it getting on your hands. And look, I mean, that's simple, do you know? It ain't rocket science. Now we're ready to put the caliper back on. And when I wedge the screwdriver in there, I push the piston all the way back, which is the caliper here. And I made sure it was. If it's not, you can actually just put a G-clamp and then you can actually push the piston back. But if you do it and you make sure you push it back all the way, and it makes it easier, and the reason is because now I know that's going to go straight on like that. Push them in, and it's now on. Put the two bolts back. Sometimes it might take a bit of a wiggling just to get them to line up again. Put both of them in before you tighten anything. Tighten these up, give them a nice nip. The last thing you want is for these to come off. One. That's two. So they're nice and nipped up. But as you can see, there's movement in this now. So what you want to do before you take off in your car, you need to pump your brakes. You need that piston to come out to actually get your brakes. Because if you drive off, when you pump your brakes, it's going to go straight to the floor and you're not going to have any brakes at all. Which is not the nicest thing in the world. That's all you do. And then, next thing to do, put your wheel back on. Double check your brake level, just make sure it's fine. And you can see how you can do that in another video, but I mean, that's obvious. Put your wheel back on, tighten the studs opposite from each other, and that's it. So wheel on, like I said, put your studs on, tighten them opposite, and that's it. Look, it's simple. Hope this helps. Any comments, just leave them below. Want to know anything, give us a shout. Thumbs up the video, subscribe. Don't forget, get your hands dirty. Now, usually one thing I forgot to mention, obviously when you do your brakes. For the first 100 or so miles, your brakes might, when you do your pads and discs, your brakes might feel a bit spongy, but don't worry about it. As long as they're working, they'll bed in and you'll be sound. So just bear that in mind as well.